What is literacy? Literacy is something that deserves a broader definition than we usually give it. Beyond just reading and writing, literacy is a term that can apply to mastery of any skill. Merriam-Webster further defines literacy as having knowledge or competence. For my out-of-school project, I volunteered at the Durham Bike Co-op to learn what it takes to become literate in bike repair. It's a community organization that lets you do all kinds of things with bikes, like just coming in for the day to have a mechanic fix something on your bike for a low price, volunteering to become a member, which lets you be exempt from fee for getting something fixed if you need it. It also lets you choose a bike to keep from their pile of old or donated bikes to fix up or customize. Even the mechanics who are really involved are volunteers. The entire place is volunteer run and they're really committed to it. For my in-school project, I'll discuss a lesson I observed in my cooperating teacher's classroom on lifting predictions to a third grade level, how I saw students putting their new skills to use, and what skills I saw that were necessary to participate in this lesson. The bike co-op is really busy. I haven't gotten to build my own bike yet, but in order to learn, I looked at bike parts and matched them to the part of the bike that they're intended for, and I participated in and observed some bike repairs for other customers. The bike co-op has parts all over the shop that are stripped from donated bikes. These extra parts are used for repairs. The co-op is really well stocked, which makes it a great place where people can find anything they need for their repair project. Here's some of the parts I learned about. Ball bearings are located in the headpiece where the handlebars go, and they help the handlebars to spin. There are 3 parts to a tire: the wheels, the inner tube, and the tire. The chain ring is one of the gears that the chain spins on. The bottom bracket is part of the assembly that the pedal's attached to. There are different kinds of brakes on a bike, and the way you repair each of them is a little different. The free wheel is the gear that allows you to shift gears. Bike repair depends really heavily on the cables. Cables are used when fixing the brakes and the gears. To become a member at the co-op, they ask for 5 volunteer hours or a fee of $35. I chose to volunteer and learn the ins and outs of the shop, and most of my hands-on experience occurred during my volunteering. Another volunteer and I replaced the fork on this damaged bike, and also reinstalled the brakes. I learned about brake systems this way and how the front end of a bike is constructed. It takes a lot of time and work to fine-tune the brakes and steering. We spent a few hours on the front end and only 30 minutes to an hour on the chain, gears, and wheels. This form was a critical part of evaluating the bikes. We used this checklist to determine what was wrong with the bike that I fixed, and I also used this sheet when I was searching for and learning about parts. The video that you're about to see is the first day I was there, one of the mechanics showing us and demonstrating to us what you need to look for using this checklist to see what's wrong with the bike.
There's 2 hubs. This is called the bottom bracket, and it's what the cranks and the pedals spin around, and the headset, which is how the handlebars spin around in the frame. And the way to check and see, the way to basically evaluate these things is see if they have wobble in the direction they're not going to move, which is hard rock. So the rear hub needs to be adjusted and or rebuilt. Bottom bracket seems to be spinning okay, but actually you can visually see, check this out, if you look down here you can see the... So, 2 bad bearing assemblies that need work, and 2 good ones. The next thing that we can check out is the brakes. Okay, on the front brake, one of the cantilever arms is frozen and not being actuated at all. The right one, which may need to be adjusted, could possibly be adjusted by backing this off, but might just need to be replaced. The housing is blown out, and then the cable that's supposed to actuate the derailleur, one of the derailleurs, is actually kind of frayed into this horrid mess. As far as the derailleurs themselves, it looks like this one still has some spring in it, so you might not necessarily... A rear derailleur has spring in 2 directions. There's this direction, which takes up the slack, because the chain is effectively kind of different lengths, so it's got different cogs. So You know, like when it's on the bigger rings, the derailleur, the jockey wheels sit over here. And that spring is fine, and it seems like the others.
After participating and observing at the Durham Bike Co-op, I learned quite a bit about what it takes to become a literate bike mechanic. It takes a lot of hands-on collaboration with a more experienced mechanic, and new vocabulary is used all the time, and it's explained to volunteers so that they can start to use that vocabulary too. It might sound surprising, but I also noticed that scaffolding is a frequently used technique in this literacy community. Processes are explained, and when the mechanic thinks that the volunteer is ready and capable of doing the task that they've been shown, it's turned over to the volunteer who's learning about it. Help and pointers are given while volunteers give the project a try, and the next step is always made clear. And this is a great way to code break because there's immediate feedback available if they need it. And some mechanics prompt or prime volunteers by asking them questions about the new task to see what they've learned and understand. Some mechanics have different styles, but they all know what it takes to successfully share their knowledge with volunteers who want to learn about fixing bikes. For my in-school project, I chose to observe my cooperating teacher's lesson, Lifting Predictions to a Third Grade Level, and see how students implemented the lesson in their own reading. Students were read a chapter from the class book Tiger Rising, and the teacher presented her own original and lifted predictions as examples for the students, and the class discussed why the lifted predictions were better. Mrs. Coleman frequently uses the term mind movie and asks the students to describe the scene. Some elements they are asked to include in their new predictions were dialogue, where, why, how it feels, and to try to put themselves in the character's shoes. I looked carefully at the main point of the lesson, the examples given by Ms. Coleman, and the students' responses during the lesson, and who is getting the most practice with the text. After the lesson, students were given a chance to try their new skills on their own during silent reading, and they were asked to lift a prediction that they had already made on a sticky note in their books. I was interested in seeing how they would change their predictions. The students actually did end up adding a lot more detail. I also think Judy is going to work on her report all weekend, and I think she hated the museum became, I think Judy was going to ask her mom if they were going anywhere. Then Judy said, "Thanks, Mom. I'm going to work on my report for the weekend." "Okay," said Mom and Dad together when Mom told Dad. The lesson was presented by the teacher. She gave students examples and showed them the method and elements to include to successfully lift their predictions to a third grade level. Immediate feedback during the lesson was available to volunteers, and this helped refine understanding. Even though the teacher was controlling the text at the beginning, she gave students the chance to control the text and practice the skill on their own during silent reading time. Code breaking for this skill comes through practice. Scaffolding is a really good method to help students code break. Following along with the guidelines for good predictions also helps students make theirs even better. The literacy in this skill was taught as a presentation of the skill mixed with practice. Students needed prior knowledge of making basic predictions, which they had done prior to this lesson, and they also needed to understand the teacher's personal vocabulary and her concept of a story as a mind movie. By the end of the lesson, both teacher and students had the opportunity to implement their improved prediction skills. The students then brought their new predictions back to the carpet for the conclusion of the lesson, where they talked about classmates' predictions as they were projected onto the smartboard. Students discussed the elements of good predictions they saw and summarized what they had learned together. After participating in both of these literacy communities, I realized that learning literacy in any form is pretty similar. Learning literacy depends on experts sharing their knowledge with learners. Literacy relies on practice. Doing action or skill over and over helps us to become comfortable and fluent in whatever it is we're doing. This idea can help us to be patient, understanding, helpful, or whatever it is we need to be to our future students as they become literate in life.